Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero. Our guest today is Anson Mount. He's an actor who really became known to us for playing Cullen Bohannon on AMC's Western drama Hell on Wheels. He earned his undergrad degree from the University of the South, a liberal arts college in Sewanee, Tennessee, and his MFA in drama from Columbia. He's appeared in 24 movies and at least a dozen TV series besides Hell on Wheels, shows like Ally McBeal, Sex and the City, Third Watch, Smallville, Law and Order, CSI Miami, just to name a few. In his latest starring role, he plays Christopher Pike, captain of the USS Enterprise in Season 2 of Star Trek Discovery. He once said the Western will always be with us because we'll always need a reprieve from science fiction, and now he's on fucking Star Trek. And his longest-running role aired on AMC, and he doesn't even have cable. He's an insightful creator, he's annoyingly good-looking, and happily married, so he's out as a wingman. But he's a really nice guy, and we love his work. He's our special guest today, ladies and gentlemen, Anson Mount.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Cruz.
This is Bryce Vine.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This
East.
is Sebastian Younger.
This is Daryl.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
This is Dr. Bob Greenberg.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hey there, this is Anson Mount from Star Trek and Hell on Wheels and the host of the Well podcast, and I'm here today on the Break It Down podcast.
And now, the Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Yeah, the Break It Down Show is proud to have Anson around. And so first you have to thank Judy, who connected us, because she's awesome, and she does a lot to promote what we do. And so I always have to shout out and say we appreciate and love Judy for what she does. I'm sitting here at Aroma with Phil, who's co-hosting me, show number 2 of the day for us. And yeah, we're fortunate to have Anson on. Anson has been on a lot of shows. Hell on Wheels, of course, was that 5 years that was on? 55 episodes?
It was 5 orders for 6 seasons. They did that. They do that thing at AMC sometimes where they do a super order at the end and split it into 2 smaller seasons.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was 50. I want to say 53 episodes in total, something like that. Yeah.
And you live in New York, but you're out here doing some work projects.
Yeah.
And then you're Captain Pike on Star Trek. Were you a Star Trek guy growing up?
I was. I grew up in rural Tennessee. Really didn't know what science fiction was. Hadn't really started reading for enjoyment yet. I was 7 or 8 years old when the original series started airing in syndication on our local UHF channel. At that time, there were only 5 channels on your TV. It was ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS, and your local UHF channel. My mom said, "Oh, you got to watch this," and because she'd seen it. The original when it was in its original run, and I had no idea what it was, but she turned me on to it, and yeah, man, 6 p.m. Sundays every week, I was glued to the television, and that was our make-believe game in my neighborhood was Star Trek.
That involved.
So when I got the role and then showed up and was being shoved in the set, and I got to sit in the captain's seat for the first time, it was emotional in a way that I did not expect.
Yeah.
It was a weird full circle kind of thing. And every single day on that job, I was like, this is surreal.
Okay, so I'm glad you said that, because we had Dale Midkiff on, and he played Elvis in Priscilla's version of the story. And so he got to go into Elvis's room, and which was left basically how he left it. And he's like, I stayed in there until I felt everything I needed to feel, so I could find the role and know who I was, just from that's the Ticonderoga pencil he had by his nightstand, for jotting down notes. And he's like, I felt these things. So you have this legacy of, Captain Kirk, Captain Picard, all these different captains and all the incredible actors along the way. Do you feel not a professional responsibility, but a bigger responsibility because of what Star Trek is and what the captains before have done?
Yeah. There's certainly, as I've grown older, as an actor, I've learned what's going to serve me and what is not going to serve me. And there's a side to the honorific of any role that the best it can do for you is to kick your ass in gear a little harder, right? And I have a pretty strong work ethic already, but we can all slack, especially when we get tired in a late in a season, crazy hours. But then there are other things that aren't going to serve you, like worrying about it, wondering what people are going to think, and blah 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 blah. So I'm pretty good at letting that go at this point. I think that if I was in my 20s or my early 30s, it would have really messed with me, especially since the role had already been established by other actors, and we already knew what the third act is in this character. But, now I'm aware that, we literally, every cell in our body regenerates itself in a cycle of 7 years. So we're literally different people every 7 years. So I felt the second act Pike, which is the one that I'm playing, can be my Pike.
Okay. But he's still a by-the-book commander.
Oh, yeah.
Are you a by-the-book kind of guy?
That's a good question. I think I am.
Yes, Phil. How you like that?
I think I am. I was raised... I had my manners drilled into me. I was never really that bad of a kid. I don't even like speeding. My wife says that I drive like an old woman.
All right.
So yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
But I've got a pretty good fuck you attitude about things when I need to.
Yeah.
But I think that one of the things I love about Pike, that while on paper the idea of him being by the book can sound rather boring, to me it just gives us a better sense of what the Starfleet Code of Conduct is and how special that is, as exhibited through this one man and his crew. And the other thing I like about the character is that he's really egoless.
Okay.
In his ability to admit when he has no idea what's happening or what's going on, and if he has one superpower, it's his ability to turn the bridge crew into a larger brain than he has, and you see that play out several times in the season. You saw it in the first episode, and it continues to happen. It makes for great TV.
I know a lot about commanders from my time in combat zones, and there's several things that commanders have to do, whether they're running a ship or brigade or anything else, is they've got to mentor their people. They've got to, like, that major, that captain, that lieutenant, they need to advance up. Maybe they're giving them homework like, you need to publish in an academic journal, or I need to see this from you. There's not really time for that necessarily on Star Trek because you've got a story to get through and everything. But maybe there is. That's my assumption. Is there's sort of like this fatherly role, but there's also this role of Captain Pike has all the answers. He knows what to do. But sometimes he needs to step back and let a captain work through a problem so that captain can get to where they need to get to. Do you have a sense of that at all as you play Captain Pike?
Yeah. I think you said it very well. We did the Critics Association yesterday, and Ethan Peck, who plays Spock in the season, and I were talking about that kind of relationship between the two of them. And I tend to believe that, you cannot lead in a vacuum. And especially when you're on a 5-year away mission, there's I think Pike's smart enough to know that these relationships can bleed into a kind of friendship or mentorship, and that can actually be quite useful and is healthy.
Yeah.
What's funny, Ethan said he thinks that Spock looks at Pike as a kind of adopted big brother, and I said, oh, I don't think Pike actually knows that. And he said, no, he definitely doesn't know that. But you've served in the military, and I'm portraying a quasi-military captain. How am I doing?
I mean, I think that's a very... Here's things that you can't show on Star Trek because you just don't have time. Everybody is eating, making waste, needs new shoes, new pants, all these things that you have to account for as a commander. And you have someone that deals with it, but you're the person that's like, why isn't the lettuce green? Why is it all brown? Like I've heard these conversations happening, and the person's like, It comes from Atlanta, and we get the used lettuce. We get the extra. We're not even supposed to have lettuce at this grade of camp. So imagine if you're on a smaller ship, like, you send an away team, they're on that ship. If they're gone for 25 hours, they have to eat. So all these things that are in there, I don't see those things, but I don't know how they add to the story. But in terms of your presence, even like sitting now, I can see that you have like a commander's kind of a presence to you, So I don't know if you're trying to act right now, but I can definitely see the reality that you would bring in that role.
I think Hell on Wheels helped in that sense.
Okay.
Because what a lot of people don't realize is that the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad, which Hell on Wheels was about, was a military endeavor.
Yeah.
The majority of those workers were out-of-work soldiers because the Civil War had just ended. And so these guys who had just been trying to kill each other a few months before were suddenly sharing this vision that they had to complete. And somebody had to lead them.
Right.
And so they hired a man named Granville Dodge, which is one of the inspirations for Cullen Bohannon, although Granville Dodge fought for the Union and was probably not as war-wounded and scarred as Cullen Bohannon. But.
So we've had Jim D. Felice on. He wrote a book about the Pony Express, and he's a really well-known author. But that gap in between from like that Pony Express ride, which happens, the first message is President Lincoln's won, and then your guys is like he's just been assassinated. So there's a very short time frame in there.
Yeah, I actually had I was involved in a pitch one time involving the Pony Express as a storyline. It was a very short-lived endeavor.
18 months.
Did not last long.
And in that time, the Mormon Wars.
They were actually trying. The writers of the Pony Express would try to sabotage. They would cut down telegraph wires.
Yeah.
Because it was putting them out of business.
Yeah. And well, there's also Paiute fights and the Mormon Wars and all these other things that were happening. Did you guys have to account for that stuff in your story, or was there enough conflict just with the getting of the railroad together?
The protagonist of the story is the Transcontinental Railroad.
Okay.
As a, I could say it's a metaphor, but it's because it actually happened. But, if you look at the train tracks from the sky, they look amazingly like a suture. And this is a time when the nation was broken.
Yeah. And
needed to be bound up. And, a lot of people forget that, great presidents or any president usually comes to office with one grand vision. And then he has to deal with history unfolding, right? So if you look at Kennedy wanted to put a man on the moon.
Yeah.
And he had to deal with the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah.
Johnson and Nixon eventually inherited that vision, but then they were stuck with the other thing that came out of the Kennedy administration, which is the Vietnam War. Lincoln did not think he would be remembered for emancipation. That was not... He knew it would be necessary. He didn't know exactly when, but he knew it was necessary. But his vision was the Transcontinental Railroad. That's what he thought his legacy would be, and he couldn't get it through. He couldn't get it passed. It wasn't until he was assassinated that the overwhelming sense of loss and the joviality in Congress that event bought the Republicans allowed Congress to finally get behind the project, and it became a corrupt endeavor from top to bottom. Every senator on the Railroad Oversight Committee was buying up. They were approving the routes and then immediately buying up the land upon those routes and to enrich themselves in the most incredible real estate inflation the world has ever seen.
Yeah.
And they all got rich.
Yeah, I've read a lot of books about that era and all of those, even the Pony Express, where they had to do corrupt borrowing deals. So borrowing corruption for the future because they couldn't get Congress to move in a way that made sense. And so, they found a guy who would do bonds and, all these backdoor deals because that's just how they did business back then. And it makes you wonder now, like, are we really any better? Have we advanced in that way at all?
Yeah.
I mean,
no.
there's so many problems where you're like, if everybody could just get their hand out of the jar for a minute.
It's amazing we survived this long. Sometimes, when you realize what all has gone into the building of this nation, it's a wonderful, strange, mixed, troubled, but fascinating country, warts and all. Yeah.
Sounds like today we need another railroad to suture the country back together, because I feel like we're separating again.
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
If it was that simple, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Reagan said it's not going to happen until the aliens land.
Well,
right? Then we'll get our shit together because there will be an other.
Right. Yeah. Well, depending on how you define alien,
Right.
Yeah.
Extra planetary alien versus them alien.
Oh, right.
So maybe that's what he meant but didn't mean. What's interesting to me is your two roles. One is you can do your prep work and research around historical actual facts that happened and build this fictional character around that, versus Captain Pike is a fictional character around a fictional scenario where you really can't do research other than research what other captains in the past have done. And that dichotomy seems very interesting to me, and you seem like a very intelligent man that's done a lot of your homework.
All right.
Just in your presidential history that you shared with us just in the last 5 minutes, I was like, wow, okay, this guy knows more about what happened here, and I'm guessing that was partly in preparation for a role or something like that. But
I'm a big believer in research as an actor, but most of the time, what we're searching for is a golden key to the character or to the world, and the research usually what we find 99% of what we find is that there is no such golden key. But it gives us something to focus on, alleviates our fear, maybe sparks our imagination a little bit. But what you hit on there, which is really interesting, is how science fiction killed the Western. And there was an era in this town's history when the Western, every actor had to know how to ride a horse.
Right.
The Western was our avenue towards escapism because we had the means, we had the horses, we had the history. We could shoot a Western. We were technologically progressed beyond the 19th century and could portray it. And then with, the advent of compositing and CGI in general, we can now look to the future, and that is at the outset. That's just that's an even further removal and allows television to really become a very broad metaphorical platform, and Gene Roddenberry got that.
Yeah.
But still based Star Trek on his idea was the old wagon trains of the West in space.
interesting.
The final frontier.
Yeah.
So you're a cowboy at heart. You're being typecast as a cowboy, whether it's
I think Pike's a cowboy.
right in the Western.
He's a white hat, but he is he's a horse guy.
Yeah.
There's a reason that Roddenberry gave Pike a horse. So I still think it has strong Western elements. But in terms of finding Pike in doing television, a lot of people don't realize. I think that or people don't work in the business don't realize that we don't come to the table having all the answers. Even the writers. The writers are quite often trying to figure it out at the same time the actor is. And so in success, it turns into a kind of conversation, and you figure it out as you go along. And you get very deft at how and what footprints you lay down so that you're not sort of painted into a corner. And I think it's a great way to find a character and explore a character and portray a character, is finding out more things as you go along. And TV makes that a great long process. I never thought I would like long-form television before I did it, and then I absolutely fell in love with it.
So Captain Pike's character arc is fluid. Is that what I'm getting? He's got a solid foundation.
Well, it's just there's so little we know. Like, of all the revered characters in the Star Trek canon, we know the least about Pike. We know almost nothing. But he is this... You say Captain Christopher Pike, and everybody knows who you're talking about. They know his entire story. But we don't have any of the second act. Right? And so... You know, I was told by my showrunner yesterday that I could say, when asked, we will get into some of the canon involving what we know about Pike, but probably not in the way that anyone is expecting.
So when Gene Roddenberry started this thing, he created this, I'll use the word, I don't have better words, I'll just say social change platform where, you know, Gene and Sly Stone were the only people going, I don't care what color you are, I don't care what gender you are, I don't care if you're a hippie or if you're a white hat. You can be in my band or you can be on my show, and I want to make that more normal for everybody. So, yeah, Kirk and Uhura, they have a kiss, but there are so many different aspects of these differences. On Next Generation, they talked about different forms of perspectives of the truth. They're both true, but they're from different people's perspectives, and so they don't jive. What are we learning now that we'll look back on 20 years and go, yeah, you know what, we're a bunch of dicks back then because we didn't realize this simple thing that, you know, we all have this common approach or this common theme?
Say the last part of that question again?
Just the social aspect that we'll look back in rearview mirror and go, yeah, we've really evolved from this point in time where, you know, a black guy and a white guy and a black woman kissing was a big deal. Now it's nothing. It's like no big deal. So when we look back on this era of Star Trek, what will those things be? Do you have any kind of a sense at all? Or
gosh, in terms of our looking back on our society, I haven't spent enough time thinking about that, but I can say that, you know, Gene Roddenberry said one time, he said, we never discuss diversity on Star Trek because it is an assumption. And so simply the character creation of Starfleet and the Federation, just knowing what that was and presenting it was the statement. And then you could explore the big philosophical ideas, and now you look at Discovery, and it's not just one black woman on the bridge and one Asian guy on the bridge. It's very diverse now, and there's been a lot of chatter about that, and I hope that we're headed towards a time where we don't feel the need to, not that we shouldn't discuss it, or I feel like it's something I don't want to hear as a white man, but that it will be a given and not something that is we feel the need to comment on.
There seems to be a nice, easy way of having, because what's the antonym of diversity? It's unity, right? So there does seem to be this balance between the unified mission of Starfleet, the Prime Directive, these things that guide everybody towards a unified thing, but with an array of genders and species and, you know, worlds and everything.
Yeah, well, I think I talked about Pike turning the bridge into a larger brain. I think that's a microcosm of the larger Starfleet recognition and the power of diversity in problem solving. And we've been figuring this out in group psychology recently, that it's multiple studies have shown that the more diverse a group, the greater the problem solving skills, because obviously you just think around a problem in different ways. And I think the Federation knows that, Starfleet knows that, Pike knows that, Roddenberry knew that. Our differences are our strengths.
If we can ever come to the day where we don't even notice the diversity, that should be the goal, right? So,
sorry, say again?
If we could ever come to the day where we don't notice the diversity, as diverse as the bridge is today, we still point out, oh, look how diverse it is. Was that done on purpose or whatever, right? But
yeah,
wouldn't it be nice if we just looked at the bridge and the bridge was the bridge, and we didn't notice that. Wow, look how diverse the bridge is. I don't even know if I like that word diversity. It's more, I look at it as, is it a heterogeneous bridge
or a representation?
Right, because diversity can mean different things, right? So you were talking about really diversity of skill sets that make up the larger brain, and that makes the use of that word there makes more sense. But bringing in, when you talked about unified, I thought more homogeneous, right? So more of the same versus different. You know, I think, to my earlier point, if we can arrive at that day where we look at something and don't even notice that it's diverse, that should be the goal. Or that would be, you know, where we should try to
the
achieve.
other side of that, the possible other side of that wish, though, that we have to be careful about is this idea, I think somewhat insidious idea, that we're somehow post-racial now, that everything's fixed, we don't need to worry about it. No. No.
I don't think we're close.
I don't think so. Yeah, I was blessed with a father that worked alongside the civil rights movement and was raised to be very mindful of where we are in our history as a country. And I'll always be grateful for that.
One of the things we've had a number of actors on, Chad Michael Collins is coming to mind right now, and he's played in a bunch of procedurals. Like, you've done a lot of that kind of work too. And I was asking him, like, you know, the whole, like, show up on time, hit your marks, tell the truth. But that's a very simplified version of what your truth is. Like, you have a truth that you just bring. Like, I can feel it right now. Like, I can't put one word on it because I kind of want you to, but what is your truth? What do you bring when you show up on a procedural, on the bridge of a Enterprise or a Star Trek ship? What is that?
Well, I mean, you just hit on it. I was having that conversation this morning with another actor.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero, co-host of the Break It Down Show and fellow producer here at Lions Rock Productions. And I'm proud to announce our newest show. It's called Justice. Season 1 is going to be a deep dive into some of the cases I personally worked on as a licensed private investigator, and you'll get a unique view into the criminal justice system that may just challenge some of your personal notions about how it should work and open your eyes in ways you never imagined. So keep your ears open for Justice, a brand new podcast from Lions Rock Productions to iTunes, Stitcher, and wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
Well, I mean, you just hit on it. I was having that conversation this morning with another actor. I think we're just, at the end of the day, actors are not shamans. We're barely artists. If anything, we're interpreters. But the trick is to interpret the material in a way that it is enlivened. And the only way to do that is to be honest with yourself about where you are at that moment, to be honest about where the material is at that moment, and to be truly, honestly inquisitive about where the person in front of you is at that moment.
The person you're interacting with?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's a stark difference that you start to see at a certain point in your development as an actor, hopefully, where you can tell when someone is truthfully engaged or truthfully in acting. That's why it's called acting. We make actions. Or when they're playing a tone, or they're playing an idea, or they're more interested in what they are doing than the person in front of them.
Right.
It becomes a pretty clear, cut and dry difference. I have been working my entire life on being more present. And my wife will tell you, my mother will tell you, I am the biggest space cadet alive. In some ways, that has been a wonderful tool for study and sticking my nose to the grindstone. And I'm just that kind of person. I can sit down to write and stay there for 5 or 6 hours.
Yeah, impressive.
I just have that, whatever that is. But I can also just as easily get lost in a daydream when I need to be paying attention to what's going on in front of me, particularly in a collaborative art form. You know. Yeah.
And before you said the word being present, I was thinking the same word. You know, what you're describing is just being present.
Yeah.
But the separation between actor and character. So you mentioned the leadership qualities of Captain Pike, and I couldn't help but wonder, like, inside you, do you share some of those same leadership characters, or do you actually learn from your character how to be a leader?
You know, I would not have. I'm not sure I would have been as ready to play Cullen Bohannon, who's a leader, general type, nor would I have been ready to play Pike if I had not had a quieter moment in my career when I was able to start teaching. And to learn that this false modesty all of us Americans try to carry around with us is really just baggage. And at a certain point, you either know something or you don't. And the ability I thought that I had no fear of public speaking. I thought that was I'd done it before. I'd done presentations, but it's not before you're asked to stand up and say what you know or think you know, that you realize, wow, maybe I'm not so clear on what I thought I knew because they don't understand me right now.
Right.
So it forced me to get really break down what it is that I do and how I do it. That ultimately, when I did that and put it back together for other people, made me a better actor. Yeah, and the ability to do that is what allowed me to showed me that I'm not the kid that was picked on in junior high anymore. It's over. I can be seen as a leader, and people will at least believe it. Yeah.
This whole conversation is going to take us in a completely different direction, and I want to make sure we get to your podcast.
Sure.
But I do want to really quickly just hit on that whole thing where you go up in front of something and you have, this is the lesson I learned in my 40s, is like my ego is really my worst enemy, so I've learned to beat it back, or life has beat it back for me, But being able to stand in front
life has a way of doing that. You don't have to worry on it. At some point, God's going to smack you.
There's something happening. Yeah. So, to stand in front of an audience and accept that, oh my gosh, my message is not getting across. And really, I need to shut up more, listen more, be more present so that I can understand what they are getting. So I really can, like a master, guide these people instead of just talk and finger and power, So it's...
Yeah,
I'm always impressed by these lessons that we get, at least for me, pretty late in life, because I'm almost 50 now. But I'm like, oh my gosh, if I would just shut up and allow someone else space, we'll all get to a better place.
Yeah, or if a lot of times when you think you have the answer, when there's a group problem, and you think you have the answer, I've found that if I just shut up, usually they're going to get to it if I'm right.
Yeah.
They're going to get to it anyway and in their own way, and they're going to be empowered by it.
Right.
Or if I jump in and try to fix it, I can be wrong, or I had only heard a part of the solution before I opened my big fat mouth.
So now you're talking like a leader.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and you're making me think.
When you said, empower them and let them come to that conclusion, that to me is a leader. That's how a leader thinks.
That, and, speaking of my podcast, I did this interview with Coach June Jones, who is a celebrated college football coach, coaching the NFL, actually, before he decided to take a pay cut and go back to his alma mater and coach the Hawaii Warriors, who were at the time the Hawaiian Rainbow Warriors.
Yes.
And I don't know if you know this story or not, but he was an NFL coach for the Chargers in success, and got an offer for a third of the money to go back to Hawaii to coach this team in 1998, the Hawaii Warriors. Out of 112 teams in the NCAA,
yes,
they were ranked 112. Okay.
Yeah.
So he's stepping into that.
Yeah.
And in one season, in 1999, he takes a share in the Western Conference.
It's
right.
Yeah.
They beat Alabama.
Yeah.
With this same roster. Actually, they cut the only 2 nationally ranked players. He cut them.
Wow.
Because they were being assholes.
Right. Yeah. Man, there's so many things I want to ask you about.
And I asked, it all boiled down to, I had a very long conversation. I was like, it sounds like you're talking about these players like, not like they're players, but like they're family members, like you love them. And he said, love's the difference. Love doesn't get talked about very much in football, but love is the difference. And he's a profound man of faith, and
Sure.
it partly comes through that, and the fact that he almost died one time. But that just hit me broadside. Yeah, there is room to love in a team situation or a military situation, or
There's such fertile ground right here in this conversation.
You have to love.
Yeah,
you have to
to
have love.
I'm going to go back to ego for a little bit. People like us, I feel like you're a pretty gregarious, outgoing kind of guy. It's also easy for us to jump in and fill a silence. An ego like, oh, yeah, I know the answer to this, and we can stick our chest out and go in. But that person that's more reserved, willing to follow, is calculated, and they have powerful words. And again, if we shut up and allow someone else to go, I can talk, and then they have this brilliance in them, and you're just like, why am I working so hard trying to solve all these problems when there's all these people around me that if I could coax them out, if I could use my gregariousness and my leadership skills. So one of my bosses, Bruce Hoover, was a great guy. He was, we were in an infantry unit, and he's not an infantry looking guy, but it turned out he was the senior ranger in an infantry brigade, which is a big deal. And so he would sit back, and we had changed units. So he's sitting back, and everybody's talking at each other and by each other, and it's a staff room, and we're doing the staff thing. And he's like, you guys are talking about a lot of really good things. He didn't hardly ever talk. What I wonder is the last commander was kept up at night by this problem, and you guys haven't talked about it. And then he just sat back, and the staff room totally changed because this one guy said this 15, 20 words, and it completely changed the entire room's paradigm and reality as to what was going to be important.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's another thing that June told me is that there were days that he wouldn't even have practice. He would group the men up in like groups of 7 or 8, and each would have an assistant coach, and they'd sit and say, okay, we're going to one at a time tell everybody about a moment where your entire life changed. And they'd be out there sometimes for hours.
Yeah.
But it got them to the place where they were ready to die for each other.
Right.
It's very smart to take your foot off the gas pedal sometimes. But with the podcast, I was talking about this the other day.
Anson, can we listen to a real quick sample of The Well?
Yep.
There's this kid, Ernest, at my elementary school who didn't have friends. And he came to school one day, and he was like, I won the Nestle Quick contest. And we're like, what contest? And he's like, the one that gets you 2 tickets to the chocolate milk world. And we're like, what? He's like, yeah, I won. And I get to take a friend. And we were all like, Ernest doesn't have friends. This ticket is open. For like 3 months, every kid was competing to be Ernest's +1 to the chocolate milk world. Which, of course, like if you think about it for even 5 seconds, you're like, that's disgusting. I'm swimming in milk and I'm drinking milk people are swimming in? Like, neither one of these things are good. But we all really wanted to go. And we were all jockeying for position, and Ernest knew what he was doing. He was cultivating it. It was like early Bachelor, right? Where you're like, I'm in, oh, I'm out. Like, oh, what's going on? This date seemed to have gone really well over here.
There we go. That's pretty cool.
I was talking about this the other day. I was being interviewed on my friend's podcast. It's such a postmodern problem. Where I go to see my friend I haven't seen in years, and the only way that we're able to catch up is for me to be on his podcast talking about my podcast.
Yeah. So who at this table has a podcast racer?
Oh, Jesus, I know.
I have two.
But I told him, I said, when I found out he was doing a podcast, I said, of course, that makes so much sense because it's going to force you to fucking listen. and mine forces me to listen in a way I haven't before, much more deeply, especially when I have to go back and do editing. And
boy, howdy, yes.
And it's just really been a good habit or a good project for my soul to participate in.
So what was the genesis of the podcast, The Well? So
I was.
Did you just wake up one day, or like?
No.
I'd like to hear. I know why mine was created. I know why Pete's was created, but
I've because of this crazy career of mine, I have found myself on the other side of the mic, where I'm right now, and I started getting pretty tired of hearing the same questions over and over and over and over and over again, but even more than that, I was getting tired of myself answering them, and I was just like, why? I'm tired of hearing my friends do interviews where they're only asked to talk about themselves. I don't care about them. So I had this idea to do a podcast that was interviews with people that are about the thing that you didn't know that they do or that they're not known for, and I kind of hip-pocketed that for a while, and then I was talking to my best friend, Branan, who's my co-host, about this idea, and it kind of evolved into more just a podcast about creative thinking outside the box. So sometimes we still will, like, have an interview in the can with Cynthia Rowley, and all we talked about was surfing the entire time. But also then with people like June, who most people who don't watch football don't know who he is, that I wanted June's story. So that's sort of our basic cause, is to think around what creativity is and creative thought, and how people force themselves to think outside the box. I went and did this fantastic interview. The Canadian, I'm going to mangle the name, but it's their science center in Ottawa, where they built one of the only two machines that was able to calculate a kilogram based on the magnetic force, and it's the last major measurement to be based on a natural constant, because it was the hardest thing to do. This machine had to perform like 12 measurements at the same time, and it was just this impossible thing. And I went to see the machine and asked them how they did it. But we've got interviews with obviously actors and singers and football coaches. I have a great interview coming up with my friend Ileana Douglas, who wrote her book about her strange life connections to film. The one we just put out that you would listen to this morning was with the children's book author, Mac Barnett. I was just interviewing Anthony Hopkins this morning. We were working together last week, and we hit it off. But it's not difficult with that man. He is a total mensch and just a lovely human being. And he wanted to be on the podcast, so I thought we were going to talk about music the whole time, but I sat down at 9 a.m. and he said, "Have I ever told you about the time I met Betty Davis?" I said, "No, you haven't." And I looked down and it's like 11:30 and I'm late for a meeting. Yeah, we're just trying to come at the subject from as many different angles as possible. And they're highly edited, as you've seen.
But they're wonderful. You guys really should check it out. The show's called The Well.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. Like, if you listen to what we do here, long-form interviews, they do that, but you guys do a lot more production. Where did that concept come from? Because you're taking a standard thing and you made it a lot more involved.
What do you mean?
Just how you produce the show.
It's almost like you're telling a story.
Yeah, well, now that you hit on the key there.
Good job, Phil.
The other thing that I've grown tired of is just, I don't know, conversations for conversation's sake. Like, you guys ask very good questions, but there's some podcasts out there that it's just like, hey, let's, have a drink or smoke a bong and just shoot the shit. And I don't care. I just don't care. And so I wanted it to be a story-based show. In other words, like, our mantra is our guest is not our guest. Our guest is the story. or our guest is the trick of thinking outside the box, which is usually summed up in a story, whatever that is. And a lot of times I'll go to an interview not knowing if there's going to be a story or what the story is. And sometimes you have to cobble it together in post, but there's always a story.
Yeah.
Or there should always be a story. Because that's what connects us. That's why I do what I do. I believe in the power of storytelling. And I think that it's something that there's some deep human need, I think, to gather around the campfire and listen to a story being told together. Because it's what draws us together. You know, I read this wonderful book, Sapiens, recently, in which this historian, his name is escaping me right now, but great book. He makes the argument that, you know, he poses this question. Cro-Magnons were bigger than us, potentially smarter than us. They had basic tool-making skills on par with us. Why did we win?
Yeah.
And his hypothesis is that human beings invented storytelling. Because what mythology does, what stories do, is that they expand the umbrella of the concept of who we are. Prior to the intellectual revolution, humans were the same as chimpanzees in terms of their groupings. They're never more than a couple of dozen. And then suddenly you started to see hundreds of humans together, and they could gang up on the Neanderthals who probably did not have that gift. So there is something deeply embedded in our DNA that needs stories to be told. And if you look at it, you know, nations are myths. Money is a myth. Empires, corporations, they're all myths. They're all stories we've told each other.
Yeah. What are you getting out of the show that you didn't expect?
Well, I knew that I need to, you know, that I need to be creative all the time, and so it gives me an immediate go-to that I don't have to invent some new project to go and do. But you know, every now and then I'll be interviewing somebody who I already knew as a friend, and they'll come out with a story that I'm like, what?
Yeah,
you never told me that. Perfect example is the Xibit interview, first part of Xibit's interview, and if you haven't listened to that, I won't spoil it for you, but there is a moment exactly like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the episode before the one we listened to, so you guys should definitely go check it out. It's called The Well.
I think, you know, you're trying to think outside the box, and I think the way that you deliver the podcast and this storytelling, I mean, you have a great VO voice, so you have this friendly, warm voice leading you along this journey. And I think that from a creative person's mind, you are delivering an out-of-the-box creative podcast.
Well, I have a great partner, too. You know, Brandon's one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. He's a walking encyclopedia, and he's a very honest collaborator. Demands a high degree of performance from me, and I do of him. And we genuinely have fun together, which I think is the best part of the podcast. Is that, you know, it says at the bottom of our Twitter description, and they laugh at each other, which is true. And he's a gifted storyteller. He's a very good storyteller.
Yeah, in the description, you also talk about not asking the obvious questions. Same thing that we try to do here is to get to that question.
Yeah.
So I've been watching, and I don't know if you've watched him at all, but the big interview with Dan Rather. And he's done a lot of country performers, and just, you know, it's Dan Rather. So he's like Steinbeck with his words. Just like, not only is there not a lot of them, but they're really good.
Yeah.
So he's got Kenny Rogers all the way warmed up. It's late in the interview, and he looks at him, kind of puts his hands on his chin, and goes, "Regrets." And Kenny, right along for the ride, he's like, "You know those last two kids I had when I was 70? I probably shouldn't have done that."
It's like watching a sword master.
Yeah.
You know, right?
And, you know, Kenny's got, because he could go, "Oh, no regrets," right? But no. Dan had him ready. And, yeah, he gave out that. And he doesn't, not that he doesn't love his kids. Of course he does. But he's like, they won't get to see me grow old. I won't get to see who they become. You know, and just to get that out, I'm like, oh, man. And so That's my long way of asking you this question. As you look at yourself as a host, and you get what I get, like we're listening to ourselves, and you're like, Anson, damn it, come on, because I yell at myself all the time. What are you learning about being a host that you didn't have 2 years ago?
All these moments in editing at the beginning of the process, when I had my first few in the can, all these moments of editing when I'm listening to the conversation back and saying over and over again, Anson, shut the fuck up. My God. Let a person finish a thought before you interrupt with your big fat idea.
Yeah.
It makes for much easier editing and a much better interview. Just listen.
That's the Captain Pike in you coming out.
Any questions for us?
No, this is great. Thank you for the interest in the interview and letting me plug my podcast, and I appreciate it.
Well, legitimately, you guys should check it out. Of course, check out the Star Trek, but the podcast in particular, I really do enjoy it. I'm going to be digging through the whole thing.
Thank you.
I've already, and everybody else should do this just on the strength, but I've already rated, 5-starred, and reviewed, because that's currency these days. So, and legitimate. I mean, that's 100%. I really am looking forward to going through and then bugging you about the guests that you have, and glad to swap back too. So
yeah, man, let's do this again sometime.
Please, please.
Yeah.